coming up on Wrestling Life.
He was a victim of his own brilliance. His ideas were so amazing and how creative he was that maybe people around him didn't get it. But yeah, reinventing himself, coming back as Bray Wyatt with the hat and the Hawaiian shirt and, cutting that promo on the way to the ring and the way he was talking. He was like a totally different person. You couldn't, say, oh, is that Husky Harris? That's a different person, a different guy. And then he forms the Wyatt family. And I think that's the golden era of NXT.
This is Wrestling Life with Ben Veal, the show that celebrates wrestling's past, present, and future with real talk from real talent.
He had the whole world in his hands, and we lost him far too soon. Welcome to a very special episode of Wrestling Life. I'm Ben Veal. As always, my Gone Too Soon co-host is the People's Broker Ash Ajaz, and today we're diving into the life, legacy and mystique of one of the most compelling and creative minds professional wrestling has ever seen, Windham Rotunda, better known to the world as Bray Wyatt. From his early days as Husky Harris to becoming the eerie leader of the Wyatt family, to transforming it into the unforgettable Fiend, Bray Wyatt redefined what it meant to tell stories in the squared circle. He was much more than a wrestler. He was a world builder, a myth maker, and a master of psychological theatre. In this episode, we're going to walk through the complete timeline of his wrestling career, his inspirations, his character evolutions, major feuds, championship moments, and the tragic end that shook the wrestling world in 2023. So light your lantern, step into the swamp, and join us as we follow the buzzards. Ash, how are you?
Ben, so good to be here again. So good to see you. And yeah, this is one, like we said, we look forward to each episode. We look forward to covering the legacy of all these superstars that are gone too soon. But this one, honestly, I got really emotional as I was prepping for it. And there's so much to cover, so much to talk about. So without wasting any time, let's get into it.
Yeah, and we talked about this a few times. We knew as soon as we started doing a Gone Too Soon series, we knew that we'd be doing Bray Wyatt. We've intentionally waited until this month, which is 2 years since his passing. And we'll do our very best to do justice today to one of the most incredible minds in wrestling. So rewinding it back to the beginning, born Windham Lawrence Rotunda on May 23rd, 1987 in Florida. Obviously taking the first name of his godfather, Barry Windham, comes from legendary wrestling family. Obviously, he's the son of Mike Rotunda, who you and I love as IRS. Grandson of Black John Mulligan, will be the brother of future WWE star Bo Dallas. At high school, he's an absolute standout in wrestling and in football. And he plays football at Troy University, but he leaves college to graduate and pursue wrestling. And thank heavens he does, because of the gift that he gave us in the wrestling world. But just for a second, before we get on to FCW and everything to come, what a family to come from. It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, Blackjacks, one of the famous tag teams of their era. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, from our childhood, IRS, part of Money Inc. I used to love IRS. When we used to play wrestling at home, I used to dress up as IRS. It was quite easy to do. But yeah, what a legacy. And then his brother as well, Bo Dallas. Yeah, absolutely. Comes from another great family of wrestlers. And I think you kind of saw that he's grown up around the industry. So he had such a great understanding and such creativity for it.
Yeah, and obviously, he's got a very distinctive look and feel. He is, such a big, stocky guy, is Windham. Yeah. He looks like he's born for wrestling. So it's no surprise, really, against the kind of legacy that he comes from, that he is signed with WWE in 2009. One would imagine they'd have their eyes on him for quite some time. He is assigned to Florida Championship Wrestling, obviously a precursor to what we'd see with NXT. And, yeah, curious crib note. one of his early coaches was none other than Sami Zayn.
Exactly, yeah. So when he was training at FCW, Sami Zayn, FCW, which later on became NXT, um, Sami Zayn was one of the coaches who was quite impressed with him, and another person who managed to impress. So one of the wrestlers used to go train at Hard Knocks Gym, and who's the owner of Hard Knocks Gym? The one and only John Cena. So he caught John Cena's attention there as well. So at that early age, catching attention like John Cena, Sami Zayn, yeah, there's got to be something special about you.
And if you're John Cena at that time, you hear this analogy of Hulk Hogan was obviously always looking to the next big guy. You can't not see Windham Rotunda and not see potential money in that guy from the first time you see him.
Exactly. I mean, when I first saw him, it was when he debuted as part of Nexus on the main event as Husky Harris. But I feel he was made to look at one of the weakest members of the Nexus. Little did we know, he'll probably come out one of the greatest members of Nexus, a multi-time world champion. None of the other guys, or I think Wade Barrett had the championship for a bit, but he was like multi-time champion.
And Bryan Danielson after sneaking.
I'm not counting him as Nexus because he got kicked out after the first night, so I'm not counting him. Okay. So yeah, like I said, as you said, yeah, John Cena must have seen it like, oh, there's something special about this guy. He could be the heel that I need. Feed him to me,
Yeah, and it is. I mean, he's in Florida Championship Wrestling. He moves around a few different names before settling on the one that we'll get to know him as. He has Alex Rotundo, Duke Rotundo, and he morphs into Husky Harris. And whilst he's in FCW, he wins the Florida Tag Team Championship with his brother Bo Dallas. I think obviously we've seen with the Wyatt Six and everything that's come in the wake of Bray's passing, we've really got to kind of see a lot more of Bo Dallas in recent years. But Bo was such an incredible talent, especially in NXT. He was phenomenal, and I always felt like he was the one that really kind of got away, really, with WWE. That he never really got what you'd really expect he could have done with his abilities.
Yeah, I think Bo Dallas really, when he first debuted, and then his Bo leave, and then running around the ring and all that sort of stuff. In those days when honestly I wasn't enjoying WWE and the product, so it was like a good breath of fresh air, something different, especially when some of these guys were showing up from NXT like Bo Dallas, or when Kevin Owens suddenly showed up to challenge John Cena. So it was like a breath of fresh air. So I saw Bo Dallas and I was like, whoa, okay, this is something special about this guy. But then, yeah, again, got put into the Outcasts or something, the Social Outcasts and all these things. And the B team, missed opportunity, definitely. And then he left and he decided to pursue other careers and stuff. So again, yeah, I think a missed opportunity. Could have been like initially, I don't know if they tried to fit him into the Wyatt family or anything, but yeah, tag team with Bray Wyatt, that could have been something they would have done on the main roster.
Yeah, and it feels a bit crazy it didn't happen, but it doesn't happen. And that brings us to NXT. Obviously, you are rocking a very dashing NXT t-shirt today. So he's part of NXT Season 2. So we've seen the Nexus come in. We've seen that unforgettable angle with John Cena with the original 7/8 members of Nexus, depending on where you lie on that. Season 2 of NXT, already we're seeing it evolve into I say evolve, I don't think that's the right word. It's like a game show. Already they're having to do these wacky tasks like carrying barrels around and all sorts of nonsense in the ring, and having to do promos about brooms and sticky tape and all kind of nonsense. But he's managed by, or his mentor is Cody Rhodes. So not a bad start really in the mainstream roster.
Not a bad start. He probably said, hey, kid, just talk about your dad or talk about your family or use that. I don't know. But yeah, Cody, again, great mentor to have. So I think I'm sure that played a part in it. And I'm sure maybe Dusty was around and maybe he gave him a few pointers.
Yeah, and Cody still obviously at the time still kind of trying to find his feet. This was around his own intercontinental title run. I think this was around about kind of dashing Cody Rhodes time, but very much not the Cody Rhodes you'd have today as a mentor. Very much someone who was a few years ahead of Windham on his journey, but still had yet to really find his place in WWE and had certainly yet to kind of jump out of his father's shadow.
No, definitely. I think you're right. Cody was kind of a rookie himself at the time, finding himself and finding a place for himself. So, but no, still, despite that, still must be wealth of knowledge he must be bestowing on him, considering, from his dad, from, Dustin. So a great mentor, a great coach to have to start with at NXT.
So he joins the Nexus, and that's when the Nexus is still led by Wade Barrett in late 2010. But the Nexus very quickly morphs into, I want to say, was it called Nexus 2.0? I can't remember if that was the title, but it comes under the leadership of CM Punk, doesn't it?
It was Nexus, then it was Nexus 2.0, then they broke up. It became the Core. The Core was a group, if you remember, with the T-shirt letters like that or something. I don't know what. And they kind of split up. The one group went to, I think, SmackDown. The other one was on Raw. They really messed it up. I think they added a few members. I thought it was kind of cool when they were trying to have CM Punk in there, and that Royal Rumble, if you remember, when Punk was just, Nexus was just protecting him basically. So that was a great angle. But I just feel like Nexus just couldn't recover after that loss to John Cena's team, the 7-on-7, if you remember. Yeah, I don't think Nexus really recovered after that.
No, I think you're already kind of moving into the world of kind of NWO black and white and red, and you'd already kind of taken what I think is one of the best concepts that's come out of wrestling in the last 20 years and very quickly neutered it. I mean, CM Punk, in fairness, did what he could to restore it. It's funny to think that it's really odd to think that when CM Punk dropped the pipe bomb and going into Money in the Bank, that Nexus angle was still going on. Kind of easy to overlook that fact, but actually he was still the leader of the Nexus at that point. And this is where, it's a very short-lived thing, really. He's part of a Nexus. He gets to be part of the feuds with, Randy Orton and John Cena, but he being Windham Rotunda is written off in early 2011 after a punt kick by Randy Orton. Yeah. And that's him really done from the main roster for that time. And I don't know the circumstances behind this. I don't know whether this was because the Nexus was running its course and maybe they didn't see something for Husky Harris. Whatever the reason, we can all be very grateful it happened, because sometimes being taken away from that main spotlight when you're not quite ready for it is the times when we really see the best reinventions. And I mean, boy, do we see a reinvention when it comes back to NXT and we're introduced to Bray Wyatt for the first time. I mean, my golly, what a gimmick, eh?
I mean, this is a theme throughout his career. I felt like he was kind of treated this way, where his run with a certain character was cut short, his back was up against the wall, and now Bray had to come up with a new idea. And this shows the brilliance of this man. And I think this is what it was. He was a victim of his own brilliance. His ideas were so amazing and how creative he was that maybe people around him didn't get it. But yeah, going back to that NXT, reinventing himself, coming back as that Bray Wyatt with the hat and the Hawaiian shirt, and cutting that promo on the way to the ring, and the way he was talking, it was like a totally different person. You couldn't say, oh, is that Husky Harris? That's a different person, a different guy. And then he forms the Wyatt family, and yeah, it was, I think that's the golden era of NXT. And I'm gonna say this, and a lot of people don't like me saying it, but I feel the black and gold era of NXT from sort of those years, 2014, 2015 to like 2018, probably the greatest era of wrestling. I think even better than Attitude Era. I would say it was just perfect, and it was giving opportunities with guys like these because where when you were watching the main roster, everything looked so scripted, long promos going on for 45 minutes and things. This was like a 1 hour show. Bam, guys were like being themselves, being creative, and that's what you fell in love with, that NXT. So yeah, what a great debut that was. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I fell back in love with wrestling around about 2015, I think, with NXT, because it reminded me of how brilliant 1 hour episodic television could be.
Yes.
And everyone there was just doing everything they could to stand out and be seen. When we kind of first see this Bray Wyatt character emerge, there's two kind of inspirations that have been referred back to for this. One being Robert De Niro's character from Cape Fear, which is a film, I have to be honest, I only saw for the first time a couple of years ago, and it blew me away. Just incredible.
That movie is, it's disturbing. I watched that movie, I think maybe when it first came out, maybe like 30 years ago. I don't know when it came out, but oh man, that movie is next level. I'm a huge De Niro fan. But that movie, I think, probably one of the best movies.
You're much too young to have seen that when it first came out. That must have been the stuff of childhood nightmares.
I don't know when it came out, but I think I watched it in late 90s. So I don't know when that movie was released.
It came out in 1991, I believe, because that movie directly inspires Waylon Mercy, who comes into the WWF in 1995, and then of course Waylon Mercy's character inspires Bray Wyatt. But let's just sit on Waylon Mercy for a second, because Dan Spivey's character Waylon Mercy was such a bright spot in such a dark time for WWF. He comes in 1995, the era of Dreek the Dumpster Drosy and Isaac Yankem DDS and Mantar, and his character was insane. He was just so scary and so unhinged and so brilliant. And if that Waylon Mercy character had landed 1 year later, I think people would still be talking about him as one of the greats of all time. It landed at completely the wrong time when WWF was still in this cartoon world. And if it had landed at the time when we had Mankind and Kane and we were on the cusp of the Attitude Era, he would have fitted in like a glove. But in 1995, for whatever reason, that Waylon Mercy character just did not stick around. Yeah.
I remember the Waylon Mercy character, but I don't think it lasted very long.
A few months, I think.
I very vaguely remember him, but I saw the inspiration Bray had. I think the white trousers probably and the white shoes, I think, was one of the things I remember from Waylon Mercy. But yeah, you're right. It was, again, before his time. And that's one of the things I said about Bray Wyatt as well. Maybe, how brilliant he was and his ideas. Maybe he was born in the wrong time, because we were in the PG era of WWE, but his ideas and things he wanted to do, maybe he was kind of held back from doing a lot of the stuff because of this PG era. I mean, what if, Bray was, again, around that time of Mankind and, like the Attitude Era? That would have been quite crazy.
Yeah, I think that's you were talking to me before we started recording, and we were thinking about the different things to focus on today. And that's one of the things that really jumped out at me that you said, Ash, is that Bray Wyatt he wasn't there in the right time in many respects. And I think that's something you see throughout all of his kind of work as Bray Wyatt. It was like he was always a bit too edgy for the product. The irony is now, in the Netflix world, where there are no network restrictions, a character like the Fiend probably has would have had so much more potential, and potentials for how that could have been broken off into maybe horror movies and to other Netflix endeavors. Or indeed, if it had been in the late 90s during the Attitude Era, where literally anything went. But, Bray Wyatt and then the Fiend, I always felt were trying to fit very, very, very adult material into a program that was still trying to understand whether it was designed for people like you and I or our kids. And I remember we'll obviously talk much more about the Fiend shortly, but I remember when the Fiend debuted, and I couldn't really decide whether I liked it. And I assessed on the fact that I wasn't really a fan because it came around about the time when when my son was 6 years old and I really was trying to get him into wrestling. And suddenly the Fiend was like, well, I definitely don't want him to see that. And it was like, you can see everything on WWE, but you can't see the Fiend. And I think that was the problem with the character at the time, was WWE was still very PG. It was very sanitized. Blood wasn't massively a thing. Foul language wasn't much of a thing. It wasn't where it is now in 2025. The Fiend was so, I mean, Bray Wyatt was, but the Fiend was so out there, wasn't he?
I mean, we're going to talk more about it, but yeah, I was thinking about this. You know, when I remember this, when Fiend debuted, even as a grown man, I was like terrified of this character, like that mask and how scary that mask was. And then him walking with that lantern, which was the severed head of Bray Wyatt. My goodness. Oh, I was like, this is, again, we had been neutered over the years with the PG era. We grew up watching the Attitude Era. We saw all kinds of crap in Attitude Era, but it kind of like we were kind of sensitized over the years. And now suddenly you see the Fiend. Jeez, what is this? But, oof, as you said, maybe wrong place, wrong time, wrong era.
Yeah, well, we'll come back to it, but just yeah, I mean, crazy. But sticking with the kind of NXT bit, like, you know, you see this character, as you say, he debuts with these kind of promos for rocking chair. He's just got this real kind of eerie presence about him of a cult leader. And we see the Wyatt family formed for the first time. Eric Rowan with his sheep mask and his big beard, and Luke Harper as this kind of rugged enforcer, and you know, all kind of shades of deliverance written all over them. And you know, Eric Rowan has obviously gone on to continue the legacy. Luke Harper we lost, and again far too soon in 2020. I think he'd be another one who'd be a prime one for this series we're recording. Luke Harper, I just want to focus on Luke for a second, because what a phenomenal talent he was. I remember the match he had, the Intercontinental title match he had with Dolph Ziggler in maybe 2014. I was just like, wow, you are absolutely next level. And then seeing that energy again when he was presented like a killer in AEW a few years later, just, you know, unbelievable talent that was, you know, much like Windham, gone far too soon.
The speed he moved at for a guy his size, I'll be honest with you, I didn't enjoy a lot of his work in WWE. I enjoyed the initial days when he was part of the Wyatt family and when they had first debuted and all that stuff. I didn't enjoy like the Bludgeon Brothers or anything like that too much when they try to repackage them together. But in AEW, I think I saw the real stuff. I mean, I didn't know he could speak so well and cut amazing promos when he was told to be a mute in WWE, simply because Vince told him, "Can you do a Southern accent?" And he goes, "I'm from New York." And so Vince said, "Oh, you have to be a mute then." So what the heck? And they say his character in AEW was a bit of a jab at Vince. So,
oh, really?
Mr. McMahon's character, yeah, because he did do various things like when he's playing the character of Brody Lee, the leader of the Dark Order.
Yeah.
No one can sneeze around him, and this is one of the Vince's things. Like Vince's hates people sneezing around him. I mean, and when he was asked about it, he goes, "No, I'm not doing that. That's just like the character I've made, because he's in a suit all the time and all these things." And also, I mean, a lot of people miss this because I was so into this character, and it was the time of it was like 2020s and stuff. You had to fill your day up with content. If you people who were watching BTE. There was some backstage stuff they used to do with the Dark Order, and oh my God, this man, he's next level. He was. So again, a brilliance we didn't get to see in WWE, but I'm glad we briefly got to see in AEW. But again, so sad when we lost him so early as well.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, this whole episode we're recording today is heartbreaking on so many levels for what could have been and what should have been. Um,
Yeah.
Obviously the Wyatt family are dominant in NXT, and they're too big for NXT. They're too big, especially for NXT at that time before NXT really had the show and the network, for the WWE network and everything that it came to be. So it's only a matter of time before they get called up to the main roster. So this is 2 years after Husky Harris was last seen on Raw. This time they're back, they're attacking Kane. And that leads to a Ring of Fire match at SummerSlam 2013, which Bray is victorious in. Do you remember that one?
Yes, I do. I mean, formerly known as Inferno match.
Yep.
They call it Ring of Fire, and I see somehow the two other Rowan and Luke Harper, they get into the ring using blankets or something like that to cover the fire, and then they all team up Kane and beat him, and then I think they sacrifice him. They take him out of the ring. Bray sits on the chair, and they kind of like guillotine him into the with the steps. But I think what an amazing first feud to debut.
Yeah.
So it showed the level he was debuting at, because Kane has always been the big red monster of WWE since the Attitude Era and everything. And him beating Kane, what a start, what a debut. So I was like, wow, I was excited. I was like, okay, we've got a new star coming, maybe after such a long time, so it'd be
Yeah,
exciting.
and it was needed. I mean, I will be controversial now, but I think Inferno matches absolutely suck. I don't think I've ever. It sounds good on paper,
Especially when they try using fire extinguishers in them and things like that. So it's bizarre. What's the whole idea?
remember one Kane had with the Undertaker, where basically one of his arms was like double the size of his other arm because it was just full of padding. It's like, as wrestling fans, do we want to see someone legitimately get set on fire? No, we don't actually. I'd rather not. We will get to that because there's going to be more people being set on fire as we go through Bray Wyatt's career. But it kind of moves towards this feud, which is so memorable and so brilliant for its time, which was this run that he had with Daniel Bryan. And this was all kind of going alongside everything that was leading up to WrestleMania 30. So the Yes Movement was bubbling along. Daniel Bryan had very swiftly lost the WWE title after winning it over from John Cena at SummerSlam 2013. He ends up joining the Wyatt family in January 2014, and they have a match at the Royal Rumble. If memory serves, Bray Wyatt and Daniel Bryan. Everyone is then expecting Daniel Bryan to appear in the Royal Rumble later that night because we know he's in the building, he's participated. It's pretty standard for people in opening matches to appear in a Rumble. And the moment when Daniel Bryan doesn't appear in the Rumble is the moment really when the Yes Movement, everything changes, because the anger and the vitriol, I think it was poor Rey Mysterio that had it hurled at him, but when people realised there was no Daniel
heel
Bryan.
of the night, Rey Mysterio never got that many boos in his life, I think.
Poor guy. Yeah, so that's what really catapults it. But Bray plays such an important role. We've talked about obviously Kane helping Bray Wyatt to legitimize him as soon as he arrives on Raw. This feud is perfect in terms of what Daniel Bryan needs to be seen in the next level, because he's obviously got to make time. Whether this was the plan or not has always been up for debate, but there's a long gap between SummerSlam and WrestleMania in terms of the story arc if what you're working towards is a payoff of a world title. You need something in the middle, and what this does for months is keep Daniel Bryan very, very occupied as a real underdog, and we're just desperate, aren't we, to see him come out from under this grip of, this cult-like grip of Bray Wyatt. And when that finally happens and he turns on Bray in this steel cage match on Raw, it was unforgettable pop.
Yeah. I liked Daniel Bryan as part of the Wyatt family, just like, the way he looked and in his overalls and the hair and the beard he had. I thought he was a great fit in the thing. I was even hoping like they give him and Bray as like a tag team run or something like that, and then break them up. But it was a great way he turned on, because we knew come on, Brian, come on, you gotta turn on this guy. You gotta break the shackles of the Wyatt family. And when he did in that cage match, great pop. And then what an amazing match then they had at Royal Rumble. I mean, sadly, Brian lost, but what an amazing match and what an amazing, sort of a rivalry that was. That was much enjoyable.
And again, talking about timing, like you just wonder, like obviously Daniel Bryan's we're going all over the place with the timeline. You have to forgive us.
Yeah, we are. We're so excited.
But Daniel Bryan wins the world title at WrestleMania 30. His first feud is Kane. Immediately after that, or during that, he gets injured and has to vacate the title. You have to believe that, given their storyline just a handful of months earlier, a Bray Wyatt Daniel Bryan world title run, world title series, felt like it would have made a lot of sense in the summer of 2014 had things been different.
Definitely, they could definitely revisit that because Bray was on such a roll from like sort of the previous year going into Royal Rumble and then going into WrestleMania, which we will briefly talk about the feud he had. But that would have been great. Depends on the result of WrestleMania because it didn't go well for Bray. So who knows if he would have been challenging Daniel Bryan, but again, it would have been great to then someone from his past come in, and that could have been the time maybe Bray capturing the title from Daniel Bryan.
Well, before we rip off that uncomfortable band-aid that is the John Cena WrestleMania match, I will touch on the phenomenal six-man match that happened at Elimination Chamber 2014. And if you're listening or watching this episode, you want to go back and watch a definitive Bray Wyatt match from this time. The match that the Shield had against the three of them was absolutely incredible, and you're seeing you're seeing the future of the company playing out right there, and you kind of knew it on the night. I remember watching that thinking like, this is huge. You could see in Seth Rollins, in Roman Reigns, and Dean Ambrose, in Bray Wyatt, you could definitely see like, wow, these guys are going to be main event in this company for years to come.
Future of wrestling, not just future of the company, because all of them had gone to do great things and all were world champions multi times over. But yeah, what an incredible match. And I was so happy that the Wyatt family won. I don't know. I wasn't a huge Shield fan, maybe because everybody liked them. But I was happy because I was more of a Bray fan. So I think that's why I was like, come on. I was so happy when the Wyatt family beat him.
You're all about the heels, aren't you?
I'm all about the heels. Yeah.
You're a bad guy.
They're better. They're better workers. They sell more.
You got the bad guy behind you on your shelf. You are all about the bad guys. So let's just run it down. So he debuts on the main roster. He beats Kane. He feuds with Daniel Bryan. He beats him. He faces for Shield. He beats them. He goes up against John Cena.
Pins Roman.
And what happens when he faces the Doctor of Thugonomics, Ash?
Came up against the immovable object. Came up against the Hulk Hogan of the time, kind of like that WrestleMania 9 we keep unfortunately revisiting. Poor Brett. That was a bad call. That was bad booking. Why couldn't Bray just beat Cena? That was the right outcome, I think.
I've got a question for you, which is that, is it because they knew that Brock Lesnar was beating Taker later that night? Is it too much?
Again, that was a bad call too. Brock Lesnar ending the streak. That was stupid. I'm really sorry. That didn't accomplish nothing for me. Brock was already established superstar. If anybody in my book was to break Undertaker's streak, it should have been Bray Wyatt, and it should have been at WrestleMania 31 when they faced. But in fact, they just used Bray Wyatt again. I know jumping ahead a little bit, but they just use a stepping stone. So the poor guy has always been a stepping stone. Maybe that's why they did it, but I don't know. That WrestleMania, I didn't really, other than the Bryan stuff and things, I wasn't really into that. I mean, I think there was some shocking things I think that happened, but going back to that Cena Bray match, Bray Wyatt was the rightful winner, I think, of that match, and it looked like he was going to win, but not to be.
Title Run Toys Series 1. Dangerous Danny Davis. Wrath. Juventud Guerrera. Ernest the Cat Miller. And Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Coming to the ring soon.
Baffling booking, and it makes such a difference to someone's trajectory, because it does feel like a lot of wind is knocked out of his sails. I mean, the two do continue to feud, and we have a last man standing match at Payback 2014. You get these crazy promos. I think this is the first time we're introduced to Sister Abigail as a potential character, if memory serves. I think this is when the child turns up in the middle of the match. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, in that cage match, when I think Cena's trying to escape the cage, and is that the one you're referring to? When the kid outside starts singing and Cena just freaks out. But one point I want to make: him facing Cena at WrestleMania. Look at the guy's caliber. He's only re-debuted a year and a half ago in the company. And he's at WrestleMania facing John Cena. This is your next big guy. This is the next future, the heel of the company. You know, shows how fast he accelerated his career. It was amazing. But yeah, they had a bit of a series after that. And I'm glad again Bray won, but it was a bit too late, I think, for me. He should have won at Mania.
Yeah. And I mean, when they feud for a while. Bray does break off from Harper and Warren. He feuds with Dean Ambrose. So again, talking about the future of the business, future multiple-time AEW World Champion, who again was not really cast in a role that was fitting for him. But the two of them are kind of two guys who are so ahead of their time and so out of their era, really. The idea of Bray Wyatt and Dean Ambrose in an ambulance match in WWE, you can only imagine the kind of matches that Bray Wyatt and Jon Moxley would have in AEW in 2025, in this era of Texas death matches and forks and staples and glass and everything. Like, again, like just two guys putting on a sanitized version of what you get in your heart they really wanted to do, but doing what they could within the confines of this PG-friendly product.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you, I was not a fan of Dean Ambrose. I just didn't get into him. My biggest pet peeve for some reason is guys wrestling in street clothes, like, the street clothes as their ring attire. Come on, dude, get some ring attire, man. Don't just put on a pair of jeans and just come to work, So I was not a fan of Dean Ambrose, but
with the notable exception being IRS, because of course,
he dressed for the occasion. He dressed for the character, which is, wearing a tie and, suspenders and all that. Had a suitcase as well with him, briefcase, so it fit the character. But I hated when guys just show up in jeans, especially the biggest one that hurt me was when British Bulldog was wrestling in jeans and when he came back. I cannot forgive that one. I'm sorry.
No, not how we want our Bulldog.
No. So going back to that, they had a great thing, but what could they have done if they were outside that PG era? It would have been the real deal.
So you said before about how obviously you're looking at the future of the company with Bray Wyatt, and it's very easy throughout his first few years to see the parallels with The Undertaker. The Undertaker's obviously lost his streak and so much of his mystique at WrestleMania 30. It seems like we are seeing the evolution of The Undertaker and Bray Wyatt. And in 2015, we get to see whether the torch is really going to be passed, because the two have a match at WrestleMania 31. Now it was in the Bay Area, wasn't it? It was very bright sunlight. I think it starts at maybe 4 p.m.
Daytime, yeah, it was
Yeah, so
daytime.
it's much like SummerSlam 1992 when they had to wait for it to get dark before The Undertaker to have his match.
Yeah,
We don't get there with WrestleMania 31, the two, because it just never really does get fully
yeah.
dark. So they're kind of wrestling in this kind of dusk, but it's a match that needs to be really, really dark and have that atmosphere in the entrances. And so they're kind of there. A lot of the kind of drama of that match is cut off by setting. I think I feel like that match would have had so much more power if it had not been done in a stadium show, but had been in a more intimate setting, or maybe even a cinematic setting for first encounter. But we get WrestleMania 31, and much like year before, what happens to Bray?
Once again, dude has to lay down. I don't know why, but I think Undertaker did say, I think in an interview, that he felt good after this match. Bray helped him get his confidence back. But I don't know what. For me as a wrestling fan, things have to make sense, and things have to be like, what are we working towards? So what purpose are we really trying to build? A new superstar who's been unstoppable for last 2 years, or are we just feeding him to this guy who's on his way out? He's already lost his streak. I think the best thing they could have ever done, Bray to end Undertaker's streak, and then Undertaker retires, and that's the best way you pass the torch, because there was so many times they tried to pass the torch to Bray as if he's the next Undertaker. We're always looking for the next Rock, next Stone Cold. He was there. You can't get any better than that. He's the next Undertaker. And even there was moments, I think there was an episode on Raw, if you remember, Undertaker whispers something in his ear. Okay, is this passing of the torch? Was that passing of the torch? Well, when is that torch eventually going to get passed? Undertaker, why are you holding on to it, dude? Just do it. So again, what a waste of a match. I'm sorry. Great match, but no,
And
useless.
the thing
Sorry.
is, that if the streak had still been on the line, it would have been fine because the drama would have been there. So even if Bray had lost, it would have been fine because he would have been one of 20 plus people losing to The Undertaker. But it was the fact that it came the year after and already so much of The Undertaker's aura had gone. Much like Triple H and Sting on that match, just a huge money match that was completely thrown away. Like, I feel like the build and what we could have had between Undertaker and Bray Wyatt if it had been given 6 or 9 months to build to a payoff could have been spectacular.
Yeah.
All the psychological warfare, all of the kind of tricks and bells and whistles that The Undertaker was so synonymous for, Kane was so synonymous for. I think they just could have really layered it and made it a much more, as we saw later with how good The Undertaker's match with AJ Styles was. Like, if they just
Yeah.
actually managed the set and made it much more cinematic and playing to the strengths of them both at the time.
It's just going back to my point of Bray being in the wrong era of wrestling. Undertaker, one of the greatest storytellers, great mind games, what all we remember, even all the hokey stuff and craziness, but it worked because it was The Undertaker. He's the dead man. Can you imagine then Bray Wyatt, because he's the master of mind games, the things they could have done. He could have had some awesome build and this culmination. Even if then Undertaker had beaten him, if the streak had been alive and Undertaker had beaten him, okay, it made sense to me. But as you said, Undertaker had lost streak. Undertaker was only wrestling once a year at WrestleMania. He was only coming back once a year to defend his streak. Once that was gone, dude, why are you coming back? So we just come back to bury the new talent now. Is that what it is?
Yeah, and it's a curious one because you think what could have been in terms of like the different storylines, like whether the Undertaker becomes like almost like the higher power for the Wyatts. Like, does he come in and be part of that group? Does he try and is there a power struggle between him and Bray? Do the two of them become tag champions together and then implode? Like, it just feels like there's so much they could do. But again, this is Undertaker in 2015 when so much has been of the mystique has gone, and when you get the sense that he was also doubting himself at that time as well. But two years, two huge WrestleMania matches for someone who's still relatively new to the business, but two high profile losses. And it's hard to rebound from that. And what's incredible about Bray Wyatt is he did rebound because he had one of those characters, much like The Undertaker and much like Kane, that actually transcend wins and losses. He got to a point where you couldn't really hurt him, even with bad booking, because he was just that good. He goes on to feud with Roman Reigns for much of 2015. This is after we've seen the introduction of Braun Strowman. I mean, I remember seeing Braun Strowman for the first time and just like being like, wow, that is a colossus of a man right there.
Yeah, we hadn't seen. I mean, I think our obsession with big guys in wrestling. So he's huge. So yeah, it was great to see him when he debuted, standing on that ring apron with the mask. Whoa, who's that? Yeah, that was amazing. That was a great debut.
I think one of the periods I've been most looking forward to kind of talking with you, Ash, is this time he has feuding with Randy Orton, but first this alliance that he has with Randy Orton. So this kind of weird feud / partnership begins in 2016, and Orton joins the Wyatt family. So very, again, lots of parallels to the Daniel Bryan situation from a couple of years earlier. They win the tag team titles. as is so often.
Rhino and Heath Slater.
Yeah, gosh, that's a
TLC, I think.
Curious footnote in history. They were the first SmackDown tag team champions, I think, weren't they?
Yeah.
Wow. But he wins. Bray Wyatt, the man who has only been on the main roster for a few years, the man who was formerly part of the Nexus and NXT 2.0, does what his father never did. He wins the WWE Championship. He becomes the World Heavyweight Champion at Elimination Chamber 2007. He defeats John Cena, AJ Styles, The Miz, Dean Ambrose, and Baron Corbin. But I remember just seeing him become champion and just being like, wow, I cannot believe. Like, I was so happy. I couldn't believe they'd done it, though. It felt quite surreal. It felt like when The Undertaker won the world title for the first time back in 91. This is bizarre.
When he pinned Cena, I think the crowd just erupted. Everybody was past Cena and they were done with Cena. They were so happy. Okay, we're going to have a new champion. He's beaten Cena. He's eliminated Cena. And then he beats AJ. And the crowd just erupts. And him even, I think he broke character, I feel, at that time, because he was this Bray Wyatt heel character. But the way he celebrates, I think he broke character, and the crowd was in it. It was almost like a babyface reaction to this. They could have turned him babyface at this time. But that was amazing. I was like, finally, he's getting what he deserves, becoming world champion. That was amazing.
I think there's two things we love as wrestling fans, isn't it? It's novelty, and it's also when hard work, we see people working so hard and it pays off. And with Bray Wyatt, we had both. We had, wow, there's a brand new WWE champion at a time when the product's feeling very stale, because Randy Orton had just won the Royal Rumble. So it's like, we know WrestleMania's got Randy Orton in the main event yet again. But suddenly, like, there's a breath of fresh air in the world title scene. And it was so exciting. And for 20-something days, it was magical. But, of course, WrestleMania is coming up. And what does Bray Wyatt do at WrestleMania?
Bray's got to do the job. He's got a job out to another company man.
But that match was bonkers, wasn't it? The match that he had with Randy Orton at WrestleMania 33 with like projected maggots in the ring at one point. I remember watching that just thinking, I don't really know what this is. Like, I didn't like it. It didn't do anything for me. I just thought it was nuts.
But I heard some people say, what was going on, and a lot of people have this opinion. They said that maybe Luke, obviously he should have been added to that match and make it a three-way match, like a triple threat, or something like that. Luke Harper, if they had added him into the match as well and made it a three-way, it would have made it more fun or something like that. But yeah, that was for the maggots bit. I remember. Yeah, I remember that one.
Just weird. Again, just doesn't fit. I mean, I loved WrestleMania 33. Great. I really enjoyed that show, but that match just didn't. And for me, the chemistry between Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt, character-wise, was there, but in the ring just wasn't. I do remember their House of Horrors match you had at Payback 2017, and that was again, that was like one of those cinematic matches that we kind of got used to, especially in the pandemic era. That was very cool. Bray wins that one with the help of Jinder Mahal. This is obviously when Jinder Mahal is gearing up to become a world champion in his own right. But yeah, just a kind of a curious feud, but one of those ones that I still really remember. I remember kind of Orton there in front of like the burning shack, and again, it's Bray's always in there with top guys. We're talking about this. Every name we throw out here, from Cena to Ambrose to Orton to Reigns, to Undertaker, like Bray Wyatt is consistently there, booked at the top, isn't he? He might not come out as the winner, but he is there facing the biggest names in the company.
I think he was the best heel. He was one of the best heels of that era, because everybody was a babyface. Like obviously Cena, babyface. Roman Reigns, next babyface. Obviously, they had when they broke off the Shield and stuff, so they had that stuff going on with Seth Rollins being the heel. But Bray was just this heel that you would put him against anybody, and he would make you care about this storyline. He was that type of heel, and that is why maybe all the how great he was. Probably all these top guys wanted to work with him. They're like, yeah, I want to work with Bray.
Well, you knew you'd get a fan reaction if you worked with him, and with his kind of next run, it is a step down. Yet for some reason, it just works so well, and I think it was because it was grounded in friendship. It's the team he has with Woken Matt Hardy when they become the Deleters of Worlds, and the pair of them win the Raw Tag Team Championships at Greatest Royal Rumble, which was that I think 50-man Saudi show they did. Yes. But something about Bray and Matt Hardy together just worked so beautifully. Like it is a step down creatively for him from where he's been, but
yeah,
Matt Hardy was so brilliant in that role. It just worked.
Exactly. And if you remember, they feuded initially, and they had that match when Bray gets thrown into the lake of reincarnation or something like that.
Yeah.
And he comes back then to help Matt Hardy win the Battle Royal. Because he's changed now. He's with, and then they team up together and they become the tag team champions. I think it was because, and it was that at a time when Matt Hardy came to WWE on such a high, like his character Broken Matt Hardy was the hottest thing in TNA. Obviously, they couldn't call him Broken Matt Hardy. They had to go Woken Matt Hardy, which didn't really have the same effect for me. But them forming a tag team, that was really, really cool. Like, I think their characters, it was quite crazy. Like delete. Yeah, that was really good.
It was really fun. And when Bray Wyatt passed, I mean, Matt shared a lot of photos and memories, and very, very clear that the two of them became very close friends in a very short space of time and had a lot of fun with that run. I'm sure Bray had fun in who they got to drop the titles to, because they dropped the titles to the B team of Bo Dallas and one Curtis Axel, another second generation star and former Nexus colleague. Curtis Axel, what could have been?
Yeah.
Still in the
he's still in the Rumble, as far as we know. He's still in the Rumble.
10 years and counting.
He's gonna show up one of these days, just. But what a team to lose your tag team title to the B team. That means you must be the C team if you're being treated that way.
But apparently after this sorry.
Yeah, to his brother, obviously. And apparently after this loss, Bray was forcefully sent home because creative had nothing for him.
Wow.
How? Explain this to me, Ben. How does creative have nothing for a guy like Bray? You know, you gotta be, I don't know.
Well, maybe
I don't
because
understand.
he kind of he almost transcends what creative could do. I think that's the thing with Bray Wyatt. He was so creative on his own terms, but
Yeah.
actually, who could have a better idea for Bray Wyatt than Bray Wyatt? He proved time and time again that he was such a genius. You can only imagine what he would have given to the wrestling world if he'd stayed alive, and then if in the future he'd become a producer or involved in helping other people, because his mind was incredible. And when he does come back, which is a good 6 month hiatus, I believe he returns in April 2019, and that's when we see his craziest iteration of all, because he doesn't return as Bray Wyatt, which would be the easy thing to do. He returns as this new version of Bray Wyatt, this sanitized, friendly version of Bray Wyatt, this childlike TV host, and we see the Firefly Funhouse for the first time. What did you think of that when you first saw the Funhouse?
That was crazy. It reminded me of Mr. Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, if you remember that as a
Yep.
kid. But yeah, it was like this portrayed of this wholesome character, and but all these characters he had, was it Mercy the Buzzard paying tribute to Waylon Mercy, and Sister Abigail, and all these different characters he had in there. But one thing about Bray was, I think, from day one when he's been working in WWE, when he's been developing his characters, he was really good at what they call leaving breadcrumbs and stuff to kind of lead you down a trail. And that's what he had been doing all this time. Like everything had a meaning with this guy, even, to the sign above, the door that he had in this Firefly Funhouse. To the things he used to say, the how the picture used to break, and he would come up with these gloves, hurt and heal, and it was something totally. It was again refreshing because the product was so stale.
Yeah.
I obviously had given up on the main roster by this time. I wasn't watching it. I was only tuning into pay-per-views, if that. I was always tuning into what Bray was doing. So every time we knew Bray had something good, and again, a different new idea, and you were just curious to see, okay, what is he going to do this time? So yeah, what a brilliant idea to come up with. He had to, otherwise I'm sure they would have released him probably at that time, unless he came up with a new idea.
It is incredible, and it's like an earworm you can't get out of your head for Firefly Funhouse theme. And obviously it's all leading up to the introduction of the Fiend, this monstrous new alter ego, which takes Bray Wyatt to a whole new level and works so well because we've seen him in this kind of happy, wavy, friendly way. And so suddenly the Fiend is so powerful. And I remember watching SummerSlam 2019, which wasn't a great show, but I remember his debut against Finn Balor and the squash match and how he does the kind of a neck breaking move. I was just like, this is like
Crazy.
probably the most intense match I can remember, with all the kind of gimmicks and stuff on it, since when Kane debuted and they did the similar red glow on the ring, and he had his match with Mankind at Survivor Series 97, which everyone forgets about because of a certain other match at Survivor Series 97. But
Yeah.
had that similar energy to it, so much of Kane to it, and completely unstoppable monster. So when he goes in to face Seth Rollins at Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia for the WWE Universal Championship, you kind of have to ask the question, like, how can he possibly not win? But it also seems crazy that he would win, because these Saudi shows are very new, and until this point they have really been little more than very glorified large house shows with lots of fireworks. Like, nothing's really happened at them. That, you might have crowned a greatest Royal Rumble winner, but that meant nothing. They've just been a way to bring back Shawn Michaels or bring back Kane. They've just been big stadium super shows. So you kind of already had got indoctrinated with this fact that nothing would happen on them. At Crown Jewel 2019, something does happen, and we close the show with the Fiend of all people becoming WWE Universal Champion. Did that shock you at the time?
No, it didn't, because this was the only result. This was the rightful result and only result, because you've built him up so strong. He is this monster, unstoppable monster. He squashed a world champion, in Finn Balor. And now he's going up against Seth. I don't know about you, but I didn't enjoy the lighting in his matches, the red lighting. I wasn't a fan of that. I feel like it took away from his character more than giving his character, because I think his character itself, the mask, the outfit, he looked like this crazy clown, this sadistic character. So I think that light kind of took it away. And a lot of the action, you couldn't really... The intensity took away that intensity as well. So I hated this red light palaver, to be honest. I wasn't a fan of it. But him beating Seth, again, huge shocker, because these events in Saudi Arabia was just to appease the organizers probably in those early days. But for, Fiend to win the world title at this event, I was a little bit shocked, like, oh my God, they've done it. But I was happy that it was the rightful thing. Not so much happy what happens on the next event. We're going to talk about it, but this was the right one.
We'll come to that in a second, but on the lighting, yeah, I agree. I thought it worked really well for the SummerSlam 2019 match. I think they have the lighting for that one. I can't remember if they do or not. I'm pretty sure.
No, it's the normal lighting in that match.
Oh, it was a normal match. Okay.
Normal.
So, yeah. But I like the idea of it the same as I liked it when Kane had it. I think the problem is the live audiences can't really see. And therein lies the problem. I've talked to you about this before, but I fell foul of lighting issues at WrestleMania 40, which meant that we missed a good section of the second night of the show because we had a bright light shining around the stadium and we physically couldn't see. And it sucks the soul out of the crowd. And I think with those Bray Wyatt, Fiend matches, I think people genuinely didn't know what was going on in the ring. And so I get it. It's just a bit, as a viewer, it's uncomfortable to watch. But equally, the product was very, very stale. At least something different was happening, and he was very different. I mean, I wasn't over the moon when the Fiend became world champion, because whilst I appreciate the creativity of the character, it wasn't really my cup of tea. Whereas Bray Wyatt, I adored as a character. The Fiend wasn't really for me, but I respected the creativity of it, but I was much more of a Bray Wyatt man.
I'm Mark Merrill, former WWE Intercontinental Wrestling Champion and 3-time WCW World Television Champion. I am thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Bad to Good. The inspiring story of a wrestling wild man chronicles the highs and lows of my life, both in and out of the wrestling ring. It's a powerful narrative of overcoming adversity and the importance of perseverance, no matter how tough the journey gets. Co-authored with my good friend and award-winning journalist, Ben Veal, this is a story I've long wanted to share, and I truly hope it inspires you. I hold nothing back in this book, revealing the untold truths of my extraordinary life, from my modest beginnings and my first boxing match to the struggles with addiction that almost consumed me and my evolution into the charismatic Johnny B. Bad. This book offers an insider's perspective on the world of professional wrestling and my journey as a sports entertainer. You'll read about my pivotal negotiations with Vince McMahon that led to the first ever guaranteed contract in the WWF and how that decision marked me within the locker room. I discuss the impact of my relationship with my then wife, Rena, known to fans as Sable, on my career. I also confront the darkest moments of my life, how I hit rock bottom and how that experience sparked my rebirth, leading me to become America's leading motivational school speaker, inspiring young people and transforming lives. Featuring forwards by my good friends Diamond Dallas Page and Lex Luger, along with contributions from Mick Foley, Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, and others who shared this wild journey with me. Bad to Good is a story you don't want to miss. Head to Amazon.com or WrestlingLife.online now to pick up your copy.
But let's come to that next event and what happens.
Hell in a Cell. So can you tell me the rules of the Hell in a Cell? What are the rules of a Hell in a Cell match, Ben?
The Hell in a Cell rules are very simple, which is that there are no rules, Ash. And it's basically a fight to the end.
So then explain to me, how does a match get stopped because one guy is beating up the other guy so much that they have to stop the damn match?
And especially
there are rules.
Given that this is the same match whereby we saw Mick Foley thrown off the cage and through the cage. I think that just killed. The problem was it's when you book yourself into a corner, isn't it? Because when you create a character like the Fiend who is absolutely unstoppable and who doesn't feel pain, if you're going to beat him at some point, how do you do that? So there's always a question about how unstoppable you should ever make a monster in wrestling, because at some point they've got to be stopped.
Yeah. You beat him in 3 minutes 6 months later, but we'll come to that.
Yeah, we will.
We'll come to that.
Well, look, I mean, actually, let's just jump straight to it, because he does have a feud with Daniel Bryan, so that's a nice kind of nod back to the past. They have a strap match at Royal Rumble 2020.
Yeah.
And that's great, but let's get straight to it. We've recently seen Goldberg retire, but he is still going strong at Super Showdown 2020, which is the next Saudi show. And it's a match that on paper looks fascinating. Certainly on a if you're imagining Vince McMahon looking at a marquee, Goldberg and the Fiend looks incredible as a match. It looks
on
exciting,
a poster.
Much like Goldberg and The Undertaker looked incredible on a match. But as we should have learnt from that match, the reality does not always match the poster.
Reality and gravity.
Yep.
Gravity didn't help.
So at Super Showdown 2020, do we see an ultra competitive match between one of the biggest upcoming stars in wrestling and now a two-time champion versus Goldberg, who's in his early 50s?
That was a joke. That was an absolute. So remember when we were preparing for this, I said, there's going to be times in this podcast I want your hand close to the bleep button. This is that moment.
Go on, Jeff.
No, this was absolute S word. How do you just talk about burying the talent, destroying a character? This is how you do it. This is textbook. If it was taught in universities, this is how you do it. What an absolute crap. I don't know, what were your feelings? Where were you? I wasn't really invested in the product, so I really didn't give a crap. I was like, okay, let them do whatever. I don't know where were you? What was your thoughts? Were you watching live?
I think I was one eye on the world, thinking the world's getting very strange very fast, and kind of thinking things are getting odd. So kind of one eye on current affairs at the time and everything that was happening, and just thinking, what's this going to mean for the UK? But yeah, I remember just watching that and being like, one of those times, like many times in wrestling, where you watch it and go, that's it, I'm done with wrestling, I'm never watching this product again. And then you find yourself back there.
Break my TV.
Boycott, whatever. And then the next day you're back. Yeah, I hated it. But also, it's WrestleMania season, and this is what happens. And it's what will always happen, because you always need marquee names in the big matches. I got it.
But funny thing is, right, they did it because they were planning to do Roman Goldberg at WrestleMania. But that match didn't happen because Roman, I think got COVID, or he had to be home or something like that. So it blew up in their face. So you're like, what's the point and
And
then
what's
Goldberg gets, does the job for Braun Strowman.
Yeah, and that's what's ironic, because imagine if they'd obviously known, if anyone had known what would happen in that month. Let's be honest, it's one of the many crazy things from March 2020. But imagine if Braun Strowman had been the one to topple the Fiend, like how
That would
full
have made
circle
sense
that
to
would have
me.
been. And it also, I think you legitimately could have had Braun Strowman. No one else has been able to get anywhere near this man, who hasn't, from who've we had? We've had Seth Rollins, we've had Finn Balor, we've had Daniel Bryan. Yeah, like not all of those are smaller guys. You then put him up against this absolute superhero colossus of a man. If anyone can beat the Fiend, it feels like it should be Braun Strowman, and that could have supercharged him in a way that beating Goldberg didn't, because they could have done all the things that they did to hide, during that time, all the things they did with the match that we had at WrestleMania 36. I mean, the only saving grace that comes out of this situation is that we, as viewers, got the Firefly Funhouse match with John Cena, which that and the AJ Styles match were the two very best things to come out of WrestleMania 36. Pretty unwatchable show at a time when we all needed escapism more than anything, and they did what they could. But that Firefly Funhouse match was just insane, wasn't it, with John Cena?
That was the weirdest WrestleMania. So there was talks, are they going to do it? Are they not going to do it? They still did it over 2 nights. I think it probably had, did it have Edge and Randy Orton, that
Yeah, for about an hour.
45-minute stinker
Yeah,
as well? Well, the world's longest match going on. So that WrestleMania was quite missable. But I still don't call the Firefly Funhouse match a match. I call it as a segment,
Cinema, yeah,
because to me it's not a match.
yeah.
It caught my attention, and it was so brilliantly done. All these things and the references. Guaranteed, it was all planned out by Bray and in his head. And it was so brilliant. They had to book it. They had to go along with it. They're like, we're in a lockdown. What else could we do? Vince like, do it. Even Vince played the devil in that. He didn't mind,
Yeah.
and
You see John Cena with the NWO, with the bad guy John Cena, for the first time we've ever seen that.
that, and even him admitting and saying this match should accomplish what it should have accomplished 6 years ago, to beat the golden child, or the most beloved superstar, the most protected superstar of all time. Rewrite history the right way, or whatever. So I can't believe it, but credit to Cena for doing that, and things. But again, it's the brilliance of Bray Wyatt. So that caught my attention. That whole thing. It was just a roller coaster ride. I think that match was how many things were happening in that match.
Yeah.
And
it's wonderful.
The bit he did behind the cage, with when he's training, that was like to the Hogan or whatever. So it's like it was all amazing.
That was wonderful escapism, and I think just again a sign of his brilliant creative mind. And as we kind of go through the summer months of 2020, and we're morphing from the world of the kind of empty performance center into the performance center, having a few wrestlers at ringside to create some kind of level of excitement, I guess, or atmosphere, for lack of a better term. And then we move into the Thunderdome. Braun, he's there, and he begins his feud with Braun Strowman. So, of course, Braun Strowman now is the Universal Champion. The student has become the man. And he does win the Universal title from Braun at SummerSlam 2020. So Bray Wyatt has become a 3-time world champion in the WWE. Easy to forget that, because I think it's a week later, or maybe even 6 days later. So Roman Reigns returns at the end of SummerSlam 2020, and a week later at Payback, he beats Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman in a triple threat to become world champion. A title change that doesn't seem that significant at the time, but actually that is the title change that begins Roman Reigns' 1,316 days as champion. Incredible.
That was unreal. I remember that SummerSlam, him beating Braun Strowman, and then Roman just showing up, wrecking everything, pretty much acting like a heel. We didn't know if he was a heel, he was a face, but he acted like a pretty much of an a-hole when he was. And he was beating up everybody, basically. And then, yeah, Fiend losing the title a week or two later. Weird. But I guess they had another heel on their hand, and now Roman was going to be. And Roman did great things with that title, the whole bloodline thing, probably one of the best storylines in WWE in the last 20 years, maybe, perhaps, for longer. So, but yeah, once again, poor Bray jobbing out.
Crazy to think when you think about it that he loses that title in 2020, and by 2024, when Roman loses the title, Bray's no longer with us. It's incredible.
Exactly.
We then enter this kind of chapter, and we're moving towards kind of the end of his time in WWE now. We enter this chapter where Alexa Bliss joins Bray Wyatt as the kind of twisted ally, and just like really, they were just a great combo. I loved the energy between Alexa Bliss and Braun Strowman, and then we get to this match at TLC 2020. I remember watching this one. It was a few days before Christmas, and I remember thought, I'll just sit down to watch a little bit of wrestling, see what WWE's got in store for me just for the holiday season. And we're just going to burn a man alive in the middle of a ring. Wonderful.
Did that event also had that zombie match with The Miz and remember?
That was wrestle crap. Yeah,
we were doing some crazy crap at that time. I remember that zombie
2020.
match. So this crispy.
2020
Krispy Kreme match.
We might have to do some deep dives into 2020 WWE at some point if we can bear it. Maybe we'll wait.
It won't take very long.
No,
I don't think it won't take very long to go through 2020.
No, man.
2020 versus 1995. What's the worst?
Yeah, man. I don't think I could put myself through it yet. But he returns at WrestleMania 37, and for the match against Randy Orton. I believe that's the one where Alexa Bliss comes out on top of a box, isn't it?
Yeah. Another moment you need to put your hand on the bleep button watching this match. What was that all about?
Where all the black goo and stuff coming out of a mouth. Was it out of a
the
mouth?
Booking, just Bray should have beaten Orton. Why the hell did Alexa turn on him and all the black thing coming out and didn't make sense? I'm sorry.
It was a cool spot. I remember all the holy S chants. Like, it was a cool moment. But yeah, again, illogical. And even more illogical is a few months later, July 31st, 2021. So after the point that live crowds are admitted again, we've just had Money in the Bank 2021. We're in front of a live crowd. Business is beginning to pick up again. Bray Wyatt, of all people, gets released due to budget cuts. You just think, how can you possibly think that someone of his talent isn't going to draw return on investment?
A quick note, that rivalry that he had with Orton. So, when Orton burned him to a crisp, apparently he was supposed to come up with a new mask and a new ring attire or something now, and his character was going to change again. But apparently the creative were like, oh, it's too expensive, or they just didn't agree with it. So then they had to go with the. But now, like,
he had that weird kind of burnt look, didn't he, for a bit, which just looked naff.
Yeah, it didn't really work. But coming to your point about later in 2021, how in the blue heck do you release Bray Wyatt?
Yeah,
that's like, to me, saying you've released, I don't know, Seth Rollins or something, or you've released.
How does he not get snapped up by AEW during this time? That's what I find incredible. I don't know do you know the reason?
Yes. So I think what I had heard, so obviously you have I think they had the non-compete clause and stuff like that. I think AEW did approach him at the time. So this is 2021. I think there's a lot of factors. And again, some of it is my theory, some of it is what I've heard. So one is AEW do approach him later on. So AEW is going through their hottest period. They've just signed CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole. So all these big guys. So I think maybe that kind of put a bit of, maybe he went in the dark. Okay, AEW maybe wasn't approaching Bray, and they weren't too sure. But also then when AEW did approach him, apparently he was working on a movie in Hollywood, or he had started working in some kind of a, which I think the guy was made for. He was made to write scripts for Hollywood movies, how good he was. So I think that's why the reports I've heard, that's why maybe never culminated into anything. But could you imagine if he had signed with AEW? I mean, unreal.
Because AEW would have given him we would have seen the untethered version, which I think we always got a neutered version of. But it was crazy to think because we got the Fiend, but we never got 100% what we could have got if he was allowed in AEW to have everything, everything loose. Incredible.
And fantasy booking. Could you imagine Bray in AEW feuding with, I don't know, Darby Allin or something like that, and having some crazy matches? I could see him teaming up with Darby Allin, and then them two and having some crazy matches, and because Darby is not afraid to take.
I mean, even if you think about it, at the time, if he had jumped, then we could have got Bray Wyatt versus Sting, which is, let's be honest, the closest we would ever got to Sting versus The Undertaker. And given how well Sting was booked in his last few years of AEW, they could have done it in such a way that actually made it look really competitive. And I think they would have pulled out all the stops. And I think that's a dream match that could have been very, very special.
And I know the Dark Order had lost a lot of steam because John Huber had died the year before. Maybe he could have come in. I think there was some talk also that, okay, maybe a higher power or something like that, new leader could have come in for the Dark Order, and it could have been Bray. Because Eric Rowan had already kind of had a few matches. He did have a tribute. He was on the tribute show for Brody Lee and all that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, Sting. What an amazing that would have been. Or him going to be in John Moxley revisiting the real. Like, I wasn't a fan of Dean Ambrose. He was a different guy. John Moxley's a different guy. I love John Moxley. Him having matches with John Moxley, or even revisiting his rivalry with Bryan Danielson. Now they're in a new place, and revisit that. So it would have been amazing.
What could have been, but he returns to WWE in Extreme Rules in October 2022. So we've seen these White Rabbit teasers for weeks of this QR code. I mean, it's very obvious where this is going. The internet doesn't really allow any room for ambiguity. We all know what's happening, but the way he returns, do you remember, with all the characters at different points in the building, was so cool.
The Wyatt Six showing up all from the Firefly Funhouse, and then with that door.
Yeah.
And then bam, and the crowd reaction was unreal, and it was rightful. You knew if he wasn't going to sign with somebody else, WWE had to get him back. And lucky for him, I think Vince was gone by that time. Triple H has kind of taken the reins. And Triple H obviously knew this guy since the NXT days, so probably had a lot of faith in him. But what a great comeback. I mean, return.
Incredible. And you see this Uncle Howdy character introduced, which is of course played by Bo Dallas. He begins this feud with LA Knight. Little would we know at the time that LA Knight would be Bray Wyatt's last feud, and this was at a time when LA Knight was still finding his feet in WWE. He wasn't the megastar he goes on to become with the company. And crazy to think that the last Bray Wyatt match we have is this pitch black match at Royal Rumble 2023, which is one of WWE's early forays into being sponsored by a brand and then splashing that brand over every possible conceivable bit of canvas and screen that it can be splashed on, because that was basically the Mountain Dew match featuring Bray Wyatt and LA Knight.
Exactly. I was going to say, man, call it what it was. It was the Mountain Dew
spot
dark match. With LA Knight lit up like a glow stick But I think the ending was amazing when he beats him, and then Uncle Howdy jumps from the top, bam, and there's an explosion. I think that bit was crazy, but
It was crazy.
not too sure about the
If memory
match
serves, it
though.
was one of those moments where you could kind of physically see the crash pad as well. So with how it was shot, it kind of lost that moment because it's just. But anyway, but yeah, so crazily that ends up being Bray's last match. We don't know this at the time. He's pulled from programming in February 2023, and then suddenly, out of the blue, the wrestling world is absolutely shocked. So August 24th, 2023, so 2 years ago at the time of recording this, he dies. Windham Rotunda dies suddenly from a heart attack, just aged 36. We discover that this is due to health complications related to COVID and an existing heart condition. Happens in very close succession to Terry Funk's passing. So it's just
Same week.
yeah, it's overwhelming. So I remember the tributes had like both Bray Wyatt and Terry Funk on the same screen. That's how close it was. So two of the biggest influencers in wrestling gone within days of one another. And
Yeah.
WWE is obviously completely shell shocked. This isn't someone who has died in days gone by. This is someone in the prime of their life, in a prime of WWE programming, who only months prior was their world champion. Suddenly dies without notice. And there's tribute shows, there's videos galore, there's merchandise being created in his honor. They release a documentary about him in Bray Wyatt in becoming immortal in 2024. I was there in Philadelphia for the Hall of Fame induction of Mike Rotunda, where as part of the US Express, where he said that you could see he was understandably broken, and he said that I wish that Wyndham could have been here. He'd have liked to see his old man go in the Hall of Fame, and he led everyone in holding up the lights on their phones, and but everyone, the fireflies, as they played the music. I mean, it was incredibly moving. And but also, I mean, you and I were there at All In, weren't we? The weekend that it was announced. I remember AEW led a tribute to him as
Yes.
well, a quiet tribute. I think it was before the show, but I remember playing the music and
So it was. So I found out about his passing. It was one of my friends who texted me, and he told me Bray has passed, and it didn't register with me again when it's like someone gone too soon. You know, it just doesn't register with you at such a young age, and you're used to seeing him. Like, I've just seen him. What the heck happened? So that was a bit of a shock to the system. But yeah, at All In, what I remember at All In was when Malachi Black and Brody King and Buddy Matthews, they paid tribute to him before that trios match when they came out, and the whole place was lit up like with fireflies, and they kind of paid tribute to him. They were wearing, I think, black armbands, if I can remember. But I think that was beautiful, and I know a lot of the guys were doing that night. So it shows to you the caliber of the man, and the impact he had, not just in WWE, but the entire wrestling industry, and what could have been if he was still with us.
and obviously, to us wrestling fans, a huge loss. But most importantly, he's a father and a husband at the age of 36. He leaves behind a family. His wife JoJo recently performed at All in Texas, which was a nice surprise, and begs the question of whether or not we're going to see more of her in the company. Obviously, we knew JoJo from WWE. Whether or
Yeah,
not
it was.
that's a one-off appearance or just might be more things to come.
Yeah, it was great to see JoJo. I didn't realize it at first, but she sings Swerve's indie theme, which instantly I picked up, and I was like, "Yeah, oh, okay, this is Swerve now using this theme," because I remember hearing that theme every time I went to Rev Pro,
Right.
and we always used to hear that and loved it. So it was amazing hearing that, and then her. So and then I was like, "Oh, that's JoJo." Bray's widow. So it was great to see her there, and kind of let's see, maybe we'll see more of her, or just it'd be really nice. It was good to see her.
And I mean, you know, it's only 2 years since we record this. Paul Heyman recently shared a post where he said, years from now, when we look back and start to micro dissect what he did, I think we'll realize he's even more brilliant than any of us ever realized. And I think that is it in a nutshell. Like Bray Wyatt is Bray Wyatt was such an incredible, incredible character. Wyndham Rotunda, just an absolute genius of storytelling and psychology. And his work is going to be studied and revered for decades to come by talent coming into the business, by fans. And he left behind, and he continues to leave behind a huge, huge hole for so many of us. As we kind of wrap up today, Ash, how would you describe Bray Wyatt to you as a fan?
Bray Wyatt was someone in that stale period of wrestling. And stale period, I mean, from some, like, when we only had one product to watch, WWE. It was hard watch those years. He was that, breath of fresh air that kind of every time he kept me from leaving and stop watching. So every time I was like, I'm done with this, I'm leaving. And then suddenly Bray would do something interesting. And even though I wasn't watching the weekly product or the main roster WWE, I always tuned in to watch Bray. And if you look at the span of his career, it's not long. It's maybe a decade, just over a decade. But how much he accomplished in that decade and the impact he's had in that one decade. Some wrestlers go on for decades, 2, 3, 4 decades, and they don't have that kind of an impact on the industry as this guy had. And he'll always be respected. He'll always be remembered. He was well respected by the guys backstage. Very selfless guy, you gotta say, considering some of the results we've talked about that absolutely boil our blood. But what an amazing talent. I think could have been used much, much better. Could have been even bigger star than how he was made to be. But no, a huge loss. Huge loss. I mean, people like that don't come around every day. These superstars come around maybe once in a generation. He was a generational talent, I gotta say.
Well, it's not a case of if, but when it comes to the WWE Hall of Fame. I have to believe that. But yeah, the very definition of gone too soon, Bray Wyatt. It's been an absolute pleasure to relive some memories of you today, Ash. I know this was a tough one for you to get through. It's been a tough one for me to get through. I hope, I hope this has been a good one for our audience and they've enjoyed it. Thank you, brother, for being here for this series. We've been an emotional series to work through, but wrestling is our life, and we love these guys and girls that entertain us, and it's a brotherhood, and we lost one of our brothers when Bray Wyatt passed.
Absolutely, yeah. I think every superstar we cover in any of these episodes, it's very emotional, especially because we're wrestling fans, and how great they made this sport that we love since our childhood. And when they're taken away from us so soon, it breaks our heart. But it's great to do something like this and honor their memory and their legacy and give them the love and the respect and pay tribute to these guys. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Well, look, that's what we tried to do today. We're not going to plug all our wares and all our socials because I want to be respectful, especially to the memory of Bray. He's a people's broker. I'm Ben Veal from Wrestling Life. This has been another Gone Too Soon. And until next time, be good to each other, pay it forward, and say something nice to someone else if you can today. We'll see you soon. I'm out of here. Bye.
See you later.